Hello to you all. My name is Tom Haak and I'm the director of the HR Trend Institute. It's my pleasure to be here at Elevate 2017, and the subject I will talk to you about today is the psychology of people analytics. A little bit about my background. My background is in international HR. I've worked for mainly multinational companies in HR positions. Today I'm the director of the HR Trend Institute. We are watching trends in the domain of people and organization, writing about it, talking about it. I'm involved in several other initiatives. You see the logo there of the HR Tech community, hrtech.community, where we try to give a good overview of the HR tech landscape. And I'm also involved in an initiative called the HR Incubator, where we help to accelerate HR innovations. Today, in the 25 minutes we have, I want to cover with you 15 what we call cognitive biases that influence your thinking and that have an effect on also the way we deal with people analytics and the outcomes of people analytics. As an introduction, one of the puzzles is that there is quite some scientific knowledge which has been there for some time. I'm a psychologist. I studied psychologist quite a long time ago, and even some of the things which I learned when I studied are still not applied today. Example, over and over it has been proven that the interview is a very poor selection instrument. Even if you do it structured, it becomes a little bit better if you do it structured, but it's a poor instrument, and still many organizations rely heavily on the interview as their main selection instrument. And there are other examples. Another example is in the domain of reward. Do bonuses work? Question mark. And still, even myself, I've spent a lot of time in designing clever bonus systems. So scientific knowledge is not always used. So cognitive bias number one I want to deal with is the action bias. People are prone, they want to take action. And sometimes it is better first to take a step back and analyze the situation and get the facts on the table before you take action. But most of our managers have been educated that you have to be action oriented and you have to be decisive, and so often actions are taken too quickly, also in the HR domain. So action bias, in fact, you could say, helps people analytics. First turn to your people analytics people and ask them to get the facts on the table. Don't move too quickly. That was number one. Number two, that's the one I like, that's called algorithm aversion. That has to do with the fact that people tend to be harsher for machines than for people. If a machine makes a mistake, the people say, hey, look here, it's going wrong. And if a human makes a mistake, say, well, it's human to make mistakes. You see on the picture a Tesla. In my country, I'm Dutch, I'm in the Netherlands, I'm from the Netherlands. If there is an accident with a Tesla, then it's even in the newspapers. People say, look here, what happened? A self-driving car gets an accident. See, you can't trust self-driving cars. So algorithm aversion, and we have to deal with it. It also has to do, I will come back to that later, that people tend to overestimate their own capabilities. So number two, algorithm aversion. Number three, that's also, you could say, a cognitive bias that influences us. That is, that we assume, also in HR, that many things have a normal distribution. For example, performance. We say, okay, well, you have people who perform average. Some of them perform a little bit better, 10%, 20%, some a little bit less. And then we design our systems around that assumption that things have a normal distribution. The reality is that there where we can really measure it, for example in performance, often there is not a normal distribution. If you look at performance, it has more what we call a power law distribution. So some people who are very good often perform not 10-20%, but 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 6 times better than average. So it's not a normal distribution, it's a power law distribution, and we better take that into account. And here again, you could say people analytics can help us to look at the real distributions and not at assumed distributions, because that will bias us in the wrong direction. That was number 3. Don't assume always a normal distribution. Number 4, you know, that's what we call the authority bias. If someone with authority tells you something, or if someone says, I'm a psychologist or I'm a professor, then people tend to believe it better. And even if people, we also like people who make firm statements. I'm sure that this is not going to happen. And often you can't be very sure, to be honest. So don't rely too much on the authority. It influences also, you could say, the whole people analytics domain, because you better make sure that the people who bring the message and the people who bring the outcomes of your research, that they have a certain authority. You can use, of course, the authority bias in your advantage. But generally the message is, be very careful if people come to you with firm statements. I know what the world looks like. I know what good people look like. Be very suspicious and look at the facts. Number 5, cognitive bias number 5, the availability bias. That's very common, and we all know that. We tend to look at the data. We tend to look at the things that are available, and then base our conclusions on what we have. And that's often very dangerous, because of course it can be just coincidental that the available people or the available data or the available research points us in the wrong direction. So again, take a step back and look, what is your question, what do you want to solve, and try to look as broad as possible to substantiate your research. Availability bias. The next one is the confirmation bias, and that is you have a certain opinion, and then you tend to look for facts that substantiate your own opinion. It's very common in the talent management arena, for example. I have selected someone in my team as a high potential. Well, I've said that it's a high potential, and now I will look and see how he or she is doing. And of course, look how good she is. She is a real high potential. I'm looking for things that confirm my opinion. In selection, it happens all the time. So this is a dangerous bias. Good analytics, people analytics, can help here to really look at the facts and not look at your colored glasses. So the confirmation bias was number 6. Number 7 is the famous hindsight bias. You know, those people, yeah, they have always seen it in hindsight. So I said it Again, taking a selection example, there's always the people who say, well, you know, I had my reservations and look what happens now. He or she is not the good CEO. So yes, of course, in hindsight, everything, you can explain everything, but be very careful when people say that, because you better put their predictions in an envelope beforehand, and then afterwards, if they have the good predictions, then maybe you can use them in the future. So hindsight bias, be careful. The information bias, that's also a very dangerous bias, also in the domain of people analytics. You know, the organization, the people that always, we need more data, we need more information. Often it's a kind of delaying tactic. It's a famous delaying tactic, not a cognitive bias, but the delaying tactic. It's always, we are not absolutely sure, let's gather more data. And you know, they're busy for a couple of months, and in the meantime we do nothing. So there is a moment that you will say, we know enough. Based on the analysis we have done, we are going to take a decision. It's not always good to gather more and more and more information, and it can even point you in the wrong direction. So be aware of that also in the people analytics area. Number 9, the fallacy of the single cause. That's also a dangerous bias. People like stories where it's clear, we do A, then B happens. When people leave an organization, that's the story. What is the real reason that Tom left? What is the real reason? And generally, they in the back of their mind, the answer is he wants to earn more money, but he doesn't say it. The real reason is more money, but he doesn't say it. Well, often there is no one real reason. It's several reasons, and so looking for the real reason often doesn't make sense. So if you do a good analysis, you can find several reasons, and you have to take them all into account. And of course, you have to also to find a clever way to gather the data. In this case of the example of people leaving, of course, it's not always what they say it is true, but there's often more than one reason. So be aware of fallacy number 9, of cognitive bias number 9, the fallacy of the single cause. We go to number 10, false causality. Again, that is, we like the stories, we do A and then B happens. Hey, so A causes B, and often that's not the case. There might be intermediate factors, a C causing both A and B. So it's often more complex than just A causing B. And but people like to tell stories. People like nice stories with a good flow. So be aware of false causality, and it's statistically not always easy to disentangle it. So you need real good people analytics professionals to deal with real causality, to find out real causality. Number 10, this was, and I'm moving to number 11. You could say the Observer-expectancy effect. And it's related to what I already, a bias I already mentioned earlier. So it is again, if you are, as an observer, you know what you're looking for, you tend to find those facts. And so that's why it's often very good to design experiments double blind. So the people who are involved in the experiments don't know what the expected effect of a certain treatment or training is going to be. So, but designing experiments, especially in the domain, in the human domain, in the organizational domain, is not so easy. It takes time, and it takes a good setup, and often we are too impatient. I mentioned the action bias. We want results quickly, and you see many organizations today trying to do it more solid. You know about A/B testing. So group A, we do something. Group B, we don't do anything, and then over time we see whether there's a real effect of A. And but often that takes time. For example, in the training domain, you divide a sales team into groups. Group A, you give the training. Group B, just let go on. They go on in the way in which they were used to do it. But then it often can take maybe a year or 2 years before you have real results. And do you have the patience to do that? So that's another element related to number 11. Number 12, cognitive bias number 12, the framing effect. And well, that's very important also in the people analytics domain. You might have your analysis, you might have the fact, you might have the data, but the way you present it, of course, influences the outcomes. Well, I put here two pictures. Basically, the facts are the same. It's both the same picture, but by framing the picture in a certain way, it gives it a different result. So it's very difficult not to frame. You can, of course, you can use it, but you better be aware of it, and also be aware of it when other people present you certain facts in a very confident way. But then try to take a step back and see whether you see the total picture. So the framing effect, can be dangerous, but you can also use it to your advantage. Number 13, a bias. People tend to generalize their own personal experience. So you look at the world in a certain way, and kind of you expect that other people look at the world in a similar way, comparable to you. I once had a boss, and he was very motivated by money, as more bosses are motivated by money. So his view on the world was, well, you know, money motivates me, so money motivates other people as well. And when I of course I had many discussions with him, and I said, well, you know, for example, I'm not so, of course it's not that I don't need money, but I'm not so motivated by money. I'm more motivated by challenging projects or doing nice things or working with nice people. But the money is not number one on my list. And then he said, well, you know, yeah, Tom, you're a really strange guy. You're maybe the exception, but believe me, most people are really motivated by money. And so this is happening all the time. Of course, it helps you to deal with the world, but it's also very dangerous. That's why we need more diversity everywhere in the workplace. Where people analytics can help here is to really present the facts. An example, a Dutch-German example in dealing with unions and workers' councils, often in negotiations with the unions workers' council, and they look at the world from their perspective, and they assume, for example, that everybody in the organization shares their view. For example, pensions, don't touch our pensions because they are super important. What helps, again, people analytics wise, is to analyze the situation. See, okay, what do people really want? What do people really want? And there's good techniques available today to find out the preferences of people in an organization, and then you can show the unions, workers' councils, and what are the facts. Of course, there is a group of people that find pensions very important, but there are other groups of people that have other priorities. So how can we design our collective labor agreement in such a way that most groups are going to be happy. You can do that in a clever way using clever people analytics. So don't generalize too much your own experience. Number 14, that's insensitivity to sample size. That's also you see that a lot. Also in the HR domain. There's a group of trainees, and the group is only 10 people. There's a little survey with the trainees, and 2 of the trainees or 3 of the trainees say, well, yeah, I'm not so happy with the traineeship. And you see, the traineeship is not very good because 30% of the trainees are not happy. And 10 is a very small sample size. So if you want to do thorough research, you need statisticians who work with you and who make sure that the research you do and the facts you present are based on sample sizes that are big enough, and not sometimes it's even worse. And then it's one trainee who talks to the CEO and says, my career is not moving very fast. And then the CEO comes in your meeting and says, you know what, traineeship is not very good because we need to speed up the career. So yes, people analytics can help here to deal with this bias, to do their research and to do their investigations in a sound way, and but statistical knowledge is of course important to deal with it in a proper way. Number 15, and I mentioned it already a little bit in the algorithm aversion, but people tend to overestimate their own capability. They're confident, and they're oh, I'm sure this is going to work, and be very careful here in the selection area, especially. We all know those people who say to you, well, give me 5 minutes with a person and I can tell you whether he or she is a good candidate. Don't trust those people. And well, people analytics of course can help here, but it's not so easy, because people who are very they are very confident in their own beliefs, but also confident in their own actions, can be very dangerous. So I covered only 15 cognitive biases that have an influence in the people organization domain, where people analytics on the one side have to be aware of, on the other side can help us, if we do it in a proper way, to overcome those cognitive biases. There are many more cognitive biases. I can recommend the 2 books, probably you have already read, and the famous one is Thinking Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. It's sold worldwide a lot, but it's a top book, and it helps you a lot to get a better view on the cognitive biases. Another one is from Rolf Dobelli, The Art of Thinking Clearly, also a nice book, easy read, and it can help you further to learn more about cognitive biases, and I think he mentions about 100 in his book. Online you can find a very nice chart designed by Buster Benson, and if you Google the Cognitive Bias Codex, Buster Benson, you will find this chart, and he found a way to really map all the cognitive biases in different categories. And well, he even put it on a big chart. You can see it here. I recommend you to put it on your wall, and every day you can look at cognitive bias and try to overcome it. It's not easy, because we are all human, and it's difficult not to be human. So I've come to the end of my presentation. I want to thank you all, and yeah, hope to see you next time, maybe at Elevate 2018. Thank you. Bye bye.